5062, or you can check us out on, again, Facebook, Next Career Co., or you can go to www.j2bradio.com. All right. With all that said, Liz, thank you for coming and getting into the show. Give us a little quick introduction about you and who you are and what you're looking to do.
Thank you so much, Melissa. So my name is Liz Prasse. I'm a graduate student at SMU, currently getting my Master of Science in Sport Management. I've been an athlete my whole life. Swam all the way up through college, was a Division I athlete at Colorado State University, where I got my undergrad. And I realized after CSU that I wanted to get my master's in sport management because I wasn't done being an athlete. I love sports and wanted to make a career out of it. And so now I'm looking to how can I be an athlete but obviously not participate in sports. And I'm looking for that people side of sports and the, communications field, marketing field, PR, service side. I'm a people person and I love sports.
All right, very good. So are you still going to play sports at the same time?
Yes, I've stayed active. I'm not going to compete, at least not right now. We'll see down the road. I've already done my first half marathon. My dad's a marathon runner, and so we'll see if I get to that first marathon this year.
Didn't know that.
So that was my next question. So what sports did you play?
So I played pretty much everything. I swam most of my life, played softball, soccer, ballet, basketball, pretty much all the sports, but softball and swimming were my two favorites. And then obviously I stuck with swimming. And I've started to pick up running, maybe do triathlons as well. I've done one before and did it pretty well. So we'll see what the future holds.
I would not do so well, let me tell you. I'm so excited because I actually just won my first racquetball game recently. So just wanted to point that out on the show. Anyways, good job, me. Hi, Tom. How are you? Glad to have you on the show. Tom was driving earlier. He wasn't quite sure if he was going to make the listening, but he's joined us. So anyway, okay. Well, I forgot what I was going to say. Isn't that fun on the radio show? Tom, you got me all distracted. I'm so excited you joined.
This is actually a really exciting topic because, there's so many things to cover, like resumes, interviewing tips and tricks, follow-ups, all of that, and everything in between. So I'm pretty excited, actually.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit. Actually, I want to say I've actually seen your profile out there. You have videos on there. You have different things that you've already done, and you've already had quite an interesting background as far as getting some experience, getting some exposure, and just getting things out there. And what I've seen so far, you're a very impressive young lady because you're just very professional already, and you've gone above and beyond. And what I'm wondering if I'm going to give you tips or you're going to give me tips today. But so real quick, tell everybody if you don't mind, what your website is so people can check it out if they want to.
Definitely. And so what I've done is over the years when I was swimming, I was also making sure I was interested in pursuing other activities outside of my sport because I knew I wasn't going to go professional in swimming. And so what I did is I got involved at CTV, which was the campus TV station at Colorado State University. Mm-hmm. And I was a sports reporter, anchor, and assistant producer. I also did weather. So if you go to my website, which is www.lizprasse.wordpress.com, then you can check out all the videos I've made when I was working at CTV, doing sports, doing weather, when I did a weather internship at KKTV, which is a TV station in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Mm-hmm. You can check out some of my videos there. Stories that I've written about athletes at CSU, and then some of my graduate school work as well. In February, I participated in the National Case Cup competition, which is very prestigious as part of the National Sports Forum, the largest gathering of sports business professionals in the nation. And what my team did is we came up with an integrated marketing campaign for the PGA Tour focusing on millennials in 24 hours. So you can view that presentation of what we were able to come up with in a very short period of time.
Now, you are a millennial, right?
I am a millennial.
So how is it to study millennials when you are a millennial? Like, do you have a view of millennials as a millennial?
I did. We were able to say, okay, this is what we know we like, because millennials are all about the experiences. How can we make the PGA Tour events experience heavy so that people want to keep coming back?
Right. Well, I did a little short stint with the sidekicks. I know we've talked about that on the show before. And when I did that, that was the biggest thing we were focused on is experience. And sometimes when it comes to sports, you're thinking about, it's more about the experience than it is the sport. Unfortunately, there are the people that really just want to watch the sport, but most people come for the experience. So it's really important to have a good show. So that's good that you did that. So what did you find out?
So we found out that if we use different social media techniques, we can get followers on social media, and then we can get them to come to the events. First, we have to get the followers, and then we can get them to come to the events, and then it's retention.
Yeah.
And it's targeting different sections of millennials. Those, average golf fans will probably be likely to follow already, versus how can we get those people who don't even know what the sport of golf is?
Yeah.
Or they have that stereotype in their minds of golf is this rich old white man sport.
Or it's a very boring thing to watch.
Exactly. I'm not sure if you watched the Masters last week, but we watched it in the house.
That. I don't know how. I just happened to miss that. I had it scheduled on my DVR. Did we even have DVRs anymore? I don't even know if those exist anymore. Yeah, that sounded good. Anyways, yeah, I missed it. Sorry. Yeah, so, okay, well, that's good. So that's good that you already have some experience and exposure, and so you kind of know a little bit about it. Now, what have you done already in the sports industry specifically outside of that?
So in the industry specifically, I haven't been out in the real world, so to say. I've been in school my whole life. Went straight from undergrad to grad school, and that's why I said I've really tried to work my experiences outside of school and swimming. And what I've done is, like I said, reporter, sports anchor, and assistant sports producer at CTV. I've also volunteered with PEP, Prison Entrepreneurship Program, as an executive volunteer to get that practice of working with people, working with the inmates to integrate social media marketing into their business plans. I did the National Case Cup competition. I currently work as a fraternity house director, so I get to see millennials and how they engage social media and they consume their sports, which is a little bit different than how I consume my sports, even though I'm still a millennial. So it's been very interesting to see, okay, someone who's a little bit younger but still in the same generation that I am, how we consume sports and social media.
So have you done any work on some of the other generations?
I have not.
So I've actually had an experience where I was doing training, diversity training back in my corporate career. And when I was there, we had a class where we had all different generations. We had one class that actually had all 4 generations in it. I think there's more generations now, but at the time it was 4 main generations. And it was the most interesting thing, because what we did is we had everybody that was in each generation talk about the other generations and what they felt like about them and stereotypes. And then they would have the person that was in that generation come up and talk about the reality of what was really going on. And it was a really interesting experience. So, I mean, that'd probably be good to see what the other generations, like how you capture that audience and everything. All right. So you mentioned that you're a very people person and you like to, communicate and get out there and do that part of the sports, like PR, marketing. Is there a specific, if you had an ideal role, what would it look like?
That's been a tough question, because I've been asking myself that very question as I'm getting ready to graduate. And for me, as long as I'm making a positive impact on the people around me, I'm going to be a happy camper. And so if that means, I'm doing something service-oriented, working with the clients, making sure they have everything they need in their suites, or I'm out there making a social media calendar and making sure we have the content that our fans like and engaging with them, I'm a happy camper. Pretty much any human interaction I can get.
All right, so social media, is that part of the human interaction piece?
Yes, it is. Because that's where I feel like our society is headed. Technology has really changed how people communicate with one another. And so I believe social media is where the future of sports media is headed.
And I did reach out to the Sidekicks group and said that, hey, we might have an intern for, the upcoming Sidekicks, or I think it's going to be Kicks 2. I don't know, they're changing the name. But either way, whenever that happens, and to see if they needed an intern. And the funny thing is that they were like, well, I can teach her how to do the scoreboard. I'm like, I don't think that's the job for her.
Not quite.
Yeah, I don't think you'd want to be in that room. I know who's in there. That's good. No, they're awesome. They're awesome folks. But either way, so, I can't even say how much I'm already impressed with all the things you're doing. When do you sleep exactly?
That's a very good question. Last week, I had more caffeine than I've ever had in my whole life. Just in a 24-hour period, I had 2 midterms and 2 interviews.
Wow.
So I really didn't sleep. The good news is I sleep on the weekends, just a little bit.
All weekend.
All weekend, sleep until noon kind of deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been very fortunate of all throughout my swimming career, I got up, got early, got after it before the sun was even up. And so that way I've learned how to get up when I need to, right when my alarm goes off, get what I need to get done, go to bed at, say, midnight.
Can you teach me how to do that? Because I don't.
Well, just following up on that, so I'm fairly impressed. So I Googled Liz Prasse, right? Because I was trying to find the website. I didn't quite catch it. And for the listeners, Prasse is spelled Prasse.
Yeah.
So Liz Prasse. And, you know, just the first results are, you know, some pictures of you with your out on the field and different athletic events. And we've got your Twitter account. We've got your fraternity house.
What you can find on Google. Lord
yeah.
help
So,
us.
but, you know, that's just the first land. So that's really good. It's impressive.
Yeah, because some people's name don't come up at all. So you're already out there all over the internet. I know you already have a LinkedIn profile, which is a good thing to do from a professional perspective. And
yeah, that's a great segue. I mean, that's probably the first place you want to go, and you want to make sure that because when somebody Googles your name, a lot of times, even before Facebook, you know, the LinkedIn profile is what's the first thing that comes up. And of course, that's your professional exposure, you know, to the world. So you want to make sure that that's up to date and looks good.
so today we're going to talk about, you know, really a focus on the sports management piece. And so what my question is to you is first, is there a certain sport that really stands out to you?
Yes, football to me is that sport that I'm most passionate about. I remember my sports reporting class, we were learning about football and obviously how to report on the sport, but then we watched a documentary, and it's the movie that Will Smith was in, Concussion, and how
Cowboys, by the way? Just curious.
I mean, Cowboys,
Actually,
if you're listening, I'm definitely, you know, interested in working for you. But yes, so back in the sports reporting class, I watched this documentary and I realized that the sport of football needs to change, whether it's the people involved or the sport itself with, say, the rules. And so last fall, I teamed up with a former Vikings player, so an NFL player who's been in the game, and his name was Chase Baker, and we worked on football and how we could change the sport for the better and make it safer. And that was a really interesting project that I'm excited we got to do, and it's actually on my website if you want to take a look. It's called Change is Inevitable.
Very cool. What do you think needs to change? Just curiosity before we move on.
Safety of the game.
Okay.
I love the violence in the sport, and obviously that's part of the attraction of football, but I realize that
I can't believe you don't like hockey. Come on. Rugby.
I mean, what's my first Stars game back in February? I actually really liked it, so we'll see. I mean,
you got to get on the glass where like they get in a fight and it's just like slamming against it right there. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting topic. I just heard recently, like basically, you know, linemen are talking about how you're basically in a small collision every time that the ball snapped when you're on the line, and you're just crashing into this other 300 and some pound body, you know, and a lot of times head first, especially if you're the center. So
yeah, not good. But either way, okay. So, and then, you know, and that's funny. Going back to earlier, I asked you what your ideal role is, and here's the cool thing is that you can kind of pick what stands out to you, what you think a role will be like. But as you move through it, you're going to change, and it's going to change no matter what, because the way the real world and jobs working, I mean, you know this from classes, every class is different, you know, but you think that there's something about a job. And so one of the things that we talked about before is making sure if this is the industry you want to move into, that you do get those internships and the exposure to it. So you've had some exposure, but getting that is also kind of a good opportunity to really see what it's really about, or find somebody to interview. And we talked about this before, but finding somebody to interview and understand, you know, what the real role is. I know whenever I did the sidekicks, I mean, there's a lot of roles, and it was almost overwhelming how many different roles and different things that there are to do, and how intricate and how many details come with actually playing a sport. So it really is truly a performance. So getting to see what those different roles are and how you'd fit in would be a good exposure for you. And what you'll find out is that one that you probably thought you wanted to do isn't the one you're going to land in, because you're probably going to change it in the long run, because that's just what happens in careers, right? So and that's what happens in life. Your, you know, passions change over time. So something to think about. So you want to figure out, if I understood correctly, how do you get in, right?
Yes, that has been the hardest part of getting your foot in the door. And something that my program director has said is, it's not just getting your foot in any door, but the right door.
Yeah, well, that's life. Yes. It's always in that. And, you know, you've already done a lot of the steps to get where you need to be. And in fact, tell our listeners a little bit about what you've been doing before we go into how to look.
What part?
What you've been doing as far as your resumes and how you've been submitting them and who you've been interviewing with and stuff like that. Because I think it's good for everybody to hear what somebody like you's doing to get there, because it's pretty impressive, and that gives them ideas, and then we'll continue to help with your ideas.
Most definitely. So what I've done is every time I've interviewed with someone, I've sent a handwritten thank you note. I feel like we've all lost that personal touch of a handwritten thank you note. Yes, you can send an email. That's probably more timely. but I love the personal touch and just handwriting a letter to someone to say, thank you for taking the time to interview me or to speak with me. Anytime a guest speaker comes to our class, again, handwritten thank you note to that person. I try to send out within a day or two after that person's come and talked to us or interview me.
Real quick, before you move on to that subject, I have to say from a recruiting, I've mentioned this on the show before, as a recruiter, when I got handwritten letters, I'd put them up, and those are the first people I thought about every time I was looking for somebody for a job. So I agree, that's a great concept, but continue.
Yeah, so that's what I've been doing. I think that's one of my secrets is adding that personal touch, taking notes, and then making it personal. I know with someone that I interviewed, just an informational interview back in the fall, we were talking about the beach, and I was able to bring that up in conversation again, or his dog. Something as simple as that, reminding people that we're all people. Yes, you may want to hire me one day, and I may want to work for your organization, but at the end of the day, we're all people.
Yeah.
And
you have to work together and understand each other, right?
Exactly. Remembering those little details, that will take it a lot further than just saying thank you, but going with a personal touch as well. Another thing I've been doing is just following up with people on LinkedIn, sending out my applications. I started back in November, filling out internships for this coming summer. And what I've been doing is just following up with people, just reaching out, saying, hey, do you know anyone? Like,
and you're tracking it all. How? That was one of the impressive things I heard. I remember.
Yes. So the backstory on this is I have an Excel spreadsheet called Getting My Life Together.
So
and
cute.
it's so funny whenever I tell people this, but I went to meet with my program director, and we had a very, I don't know exactly how to describe it, kind of meeting, but basically it motivated
like most
me.
of my meetings in life. Not quite sure how to describe them.
Not sure how to describe it, but it was one of those that I got very motivated. I was like, he said some things that he probably shouldn't have said to me, but it motivated me. And so what it is, I took my anger and used as motivation to put the spreadsheet together, literally called it Getting My Life Together, and I brought it to him. And he's like, oh, I like the title. I was thinking, well, you inspired it. And so what I have is I have an internships tab, and this is where I have, all the internships that I've applied for, the details of, are they part-time, full-time, summer, or fall, that kind of deal, where they are, who I know as my connection, my status, have I applied for this? Am I in the middle of applying for it? And then I have it color-coded as well because I like to be a little bit extra.
She's an organized person.
Yeah,
I need to learn
like
from her.
it.
I'm telling you, I'm going to learn on this show
So
more than I'm going to.
She takes the idea of getting a job's a job, and yeah, that's great.
And there's so few people that do that. So, I mean, that's already impressive. Now, have you picked your top 5?
Yes, I would say my top choice right now is the American Airlines Center, working as a premium services coordinator position. I actually interviewed for that this morning and went very well. Felt like it would be a good fit for me and a good fit for them. Mm-hmm. Cowboys, I've interviewed with before. It was for a spring internship, which I ended up not accepting just because I could not take a full-time internship on top of full-time grad school and already a job. But the Cowboys is another organization I could see myself working very well with and bringing a lot of value to. And then as far as other sports, I'm looking at the Dallas Stars. And then, Melissa, you've mentioned the Dallas Sidekicks. And so those are at least a couple that I'm looking at in the marketing arm because a lot of people said I'd be good at marketing.
Yeah, very good. Okay. So with those top 5, what have you done to try to get into those top 5?
Mm-hmm. So with the American Airlines Center, Andrew Silverman is the Chief Revenue Officer. He came and spoke to us at the beginning of the school year, and he was someone who wrote in my handwritten thank you note. He responded back to me, and then we had a whole conversation. I interviewed him just over the phone to learn a little bit more of this process. So he's kind of been my source throughout the year of the American Airlines Center. He told me about this job that had opened up, followed up with him on it, applied for it. He sent my information to HR, which I've learned that is the key. Find someone on the inside, get them to send your resume to HR. That's how I got my in with the Cowboys. Erin Cornell, she was a graduate student of the same program at SMU. She works with the Cowboys, sent her my resume. She had sent in to Courtney Miller-Spiegler, who interviewed me for an internship in Suite Sales and Services. Like I said, ended up not getting that internship after all, but I got in at the Cowboys right there. I've gone to the Cowboys Career Day. And at the National Sports Forum, I met a few other Cowboys employees. So I've just really worked my Cowboys network as well. Yeah. Dallas Stars, we've met with a few executives. Like I said, sent handwritten thank you notes. That's really impressed a few of them. They've reached out to me asking for my resume kind of deal. And so that's at least 3 of them. And then the marketing arm was another one that we have a few alumni working at. So I've reached out to them. Like I said, sent that resume into HR.
So I'm curious, so you mentioned your resume several times. So have you gone with the 1-pager, 2-pager? We got a book. What are we looking at?
Not a book, but I will say it is 2 full pages. I broke the 1-page rule. I feel like I've got enough experience that's relevant that I could put on the 2 pages.
Yeah, that's good too. Yeah, the 1-page rule was pretty cliche back in the day, and I think now, a lot of times they're electronic anyway, so it's not like we're wasting paper or anything. It's probably a PDF or a Word document. And yeah, that's a good strategy.
Yes, and something that I didn't realize right away is I would always send my resume in as a Word doc, but someone pointed out to me to send it as a PDF because
Absolutely.
you
Yes.
never know the formatting on a computer.
Exactly. They may have an older Word version, or you just never know, but PDF travels nicely. Yeah, that's a great strategy as well. So one of the other things too that I know that a lot of times they recommend, or they used to, and now they don't, is putting some kind of a blurb at the top about your objectives or something. Seems that that's a little bit overkill because they already know what you're applying for, the position, right? So, but one of the things that I do see that they recommend is like you put a summary of your qualifications at the top, because sometimes they're just looking through a quick look at a resume and they want to just see the bullet points, whether or not you're going to get in the right pile or not. So that's always a real good strategy as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Tom said Mavericks. Would you be interested in the Mavericks? Tom, are you going to hook her up?
I would. I mean, I know they obviously are trying to deal with the backlash of a recent scandal, but I'm definitely a Mavs fan, have always been since I grew up here in Dallas.
Yeah. So going back to the search process that you're doing, and we'll make sure to get Tom to connect you with the Mavericks, by the way. So you're doing the right steps, because you're right that what you want to do is get that referral in, especially in an industry like sports management that's harder to get into. It's important to make sure that you get that referral in, because that's what's going to really help you. So knowing the right people will get you a lot of places. And we're obviously helping you, trying to get you to a couple places, and hopefully those pan out. Has anything come up yet?
Not yet.
Okay, well, this show is going to be the catalyst, I'm telling you. It's going to get you there.
We knew Liz back when.
Yeah,
right?
Don't forget us here. This is your first. No, it's not. Okay, well, either way, it's the most important one.
It is.
Just kidding. Make sure to put this on the website. No. Okay, so getting the referral in. Now, what else are you doing to reach those target companies? Like, have you gone to any of their sports fan pages by chance?
I haven't, but what I've done is on that spreadsheet, I have a tab called Who Friends, and that's from Bob Bodine, who's a professional in the sports industry. And what he recommends is, like I've done, is literally have your Who Friends. What that is you write down who you know, and then I have like what their title is, what the company is, how I know them, and then I rank them on a connection. Is it a strong connection or more of a weak or moderate connection? And then I have LinkedIn, whether I have them on LinkedIn or if it's pending, or if I couldn't find them on LinkedIn, something like that. So that way I know, and I can go back and say, all right, so when I was applying for a job with the Dallas Cowboys, like, who do I know that works at the Cowboys or could know someone at the Cowboys? And that way I just literally had a spreadsheet. So even though I didn't go to their fan pages right away, I went to the people I knew, and then I went to their fan pages to maybe just look at their Instagram account or their social media accounts to see kind of what content they put out there.
So one of the things that I would always suggest is kind of trying to think outside the box, and that's why I asked about the fan page. One of the things that you'll find in life is that sometimes the people that have influence are the least expected people. So what I'm saying is a lot of times that the fan pages are run by people that are part of that sport, that are very connected to that sport. So if you go to the person who's the right-hand man to, Jerry Jones or something, they may not actually have as much influence as you'd think, or they get hit up so many times by so many people that they're not going to remember to say anything to Jerry or whoever, whoever it would be. So going a route like that, like an indirect route, might also help you. So going on their fan page and mentioning that you're really excited, you want to be a part of that team, you'd be interested in an internship. Because one of the things I mentioned to you before is a lot of times, I know whenever I was at the Psychics, we really struggled to find the right talent. Well, you're out there struggling to get into that. So finding the ways to connect, because if you would have been on that fan page, that would have been a way that I would have found out about you. That would have been a great way to find out about you, because somebody else might have gone to the coach or the owner, and it may never gotten to us where we need it in the office, which is where you would ultimately want to be. So, and then also, the other thing is just making sure that you're getting known in that industry in whatever way you can. So if there's not necessarily a fans page, if there's any other communities of that area, like in that group that are in that sports, or I'm not really sure in the sports industry, and I should know more, if there's certain like groups that get together that, would have anything to do with that, and, trying to get to be a part of those groups that would have some exposure to, the teams. Do you have any other suggestions on areas to go or how to find?
Well, one of the things that I always use it as a strategy too is when you know that you're interviewing with somebody, do some stalking, go find out a little bit more about who's going to interview you, get their name, go on their LinkedIn profile. A lot of times that'll give you a clue of what kind of questions you're going to get from them because of their areas of expertise.
And we talked about this is like if you're leveraging something like LinkedIn, is to reach out to people and actually just kind of ask them, say, hey, I'm interested in being a part of this. Can you give me any advice on how to get in there? And that kind of, a lot of times people will respond to that before they'll respond to, can you get me in the door? It's more like, can you give me advice? Can you help me? Or just say I'm a student, wanting to learn more about this industry because that's what I'm thinking about doing as a career path. And then what you do is you create ambassadors that way. Ambassadors are your best friends because ultimately they're going to be impressed with you, which there's no way they won't be. And they're going to be out there talking about you. And so when the opportunity does come up, and it may not be right away, they're going to remember your name, especially if you send them that handwritten thank you note.
Yes.
So what are the biggest challenges that you faced and questions that you have specifically that we could help you with today?
So I want to know how to follow up with people in terms of, say you've sent in your application or your resume, cover letter, whatever it is that people have asked for, and then you don't hear anything back for, say, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. Like, kind of what is the protocol after that? Do you send an email or do you just sit and wait?
What I would say is you never want to stalk. If it's somebody that you know and you meet with, then I would ask them how they want you to follow up. That's the best approach if you have that. But if it's just something that you're just sending out there because somebody referred you, I would say to follow up the first time probably in maybe 2 weeks. And then after that, it would be like about a month. So you want to give them time and space. You don't want to stalk by any means. And sometimes it can come across that way. And then you just kind of space it out from there just to kind of remind them that you exist and that they might want to talk to you, but if you do it like every 2 weeks, it's going to get a little bit much and they're going to not want to talk to you at that point. And you also got to be mindful. It's good to get your resume into HR from as many different directions as you can, but you also want to make sure that you're not applying over and over, that you're getting referred over and over. There's a difference in those two. Would you say the same?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and another thing too is if you interview with multiple people, make sure you get their information because you want to send a follow-up with each person because you don't know. Sometimes it seems like a person in the room is the one making the decision, but they may be deferring to other people, and you definitely want to try to tailor, maybe just, you send out kind of a common thank you, but if you can tailor it for each person a little bit differently, maybe a certain question that they asked or something, that always helps as well to make you connect.
And like I said, the people with influence sometimes are the least expected. So sometimes it may be the security guard up front or the admin that you're talking to. So you want to think about them too and make sure you're very polite when you walk in, that you're, that you're focused on really everybody that you come in contact with. And the moment you pull into the driveway, I've heard stories about somebody like almost running into the president of the company and like flipping them off on the way to the interview. I mean, like seriously, these stories exist. So don't do that for sure. But, just make sure that, the moment you're there, that you're on your best behavior, if you will. But what other kind of questions do you have? I think you mentioned a couple before the show, so I want to make sure that we do cover those. So follow-up is that. I think you also mentioned about how you address the letter, if I was correct.
Yes. So I've always been taught address someone as Mr. or Miss. How do you address a person when you're, not even meeting them for this first time, but sending that initial email?
If you know their name?
Mm-hmm. If you know their name.
Oh, that's a good one because the thing is that as with everything else in careers and people, everybody has a different preference. But I would probably keep it as very professional and just, Mr. or Mrs. and put their last name. That would be my recommendation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it can't hurt. I think definitely giving them a sign of respect will always go a long ways. Yeah.
And then when can you transition into a more informal, casual, hey, Melissa, versus, hey, Miss Walker?
Well, a lot of times you take a cue from them. Because
Yeah,
they say, hey,
that's...
you can call me Bob or whatever, and that'll help.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you want to keep it professional. I mean, it's kind of 50-50 because in the sports industry, it just depends, and it depends on who you're talking to,
yeah.
I think.
And you can take some visual cues off of how they're dressed maybe. Some people dress up, and that might give you an indication that they're a little bit more formal, and but other people are kind of casual. But it's always easier to err on the conservative side until they let you kind of come down a notch or two, and then you can go that direction.
Yeah, I think that, the other point is, so Tom's added some advice. Let me kind of give you these. So it says, don't look past the current job to the next. He said, ask them if there's any concerns about hiring you and keep them talking. So those are some advices that we've gotten.
Oh, that's a great one too. Keep them talking because,
That is
people like
advice,
to talk
yes.
about themselves and they'll talk about themselves with a company, and then they'll they'll actually give you answers to some of the questions they're going to ask later because they've given you some information, and you can kind of tailor your answers better for what they are asking.
Yeah. So to that point, like if you get to the interview, which we kind of just jumped topics, and Tom said a good point, Jeff, is I actually have a word for that. Oh, what's the right word? Slant. So start with the other person, listen to what they have to say, ask open-ended questions, understand the need, and then you talk. So that's the little concept that goes with it. Yeah, I made it up on my own. Isn't that cool? You know how long I sat there with letters trying to figure out how to. No, but seriously, yeah. So that's but ultimately, to Jeff's point, it's a matter of if you get them to say something, then you know how to address it. But you really want to find out what their needs are, because your job isn't to talk about all the things you've done, because you've already done a lot, and over life you've done a lot, and you never know what they want to hear. But by getting them to talk first and asking those open-ended questions is going to give you the opportunity to find out what keeps them up at night, what do they really need, and then you can tailor your response. You're not making it up, but you're saying what experiences you have that really fit that need. So you're answering their questions for them, and they're going to be like, wow, I need this person because they said exactly what I wanted to hear, and you're just sitting there smiling. Not only that, but as you can tell, people like to talk, like we're doing here on the radio, and the more people talk, the more they feel like it's a good interview. It's really crazy. I've had interviews where I didn't say hardly a word, and they felt like, they walked out and like, you're hired. And they did all the talking. I was just like, cool. But I don't want to take your job. No, I was kidding.
Yeah, and then it's kind of psychological. Then you get them in a position where they're trying to sell you on the company a little bit. So if you can ask the right questions, and an intelligent question will go a lot further, even sometimes than an intelligent answer, because you're asking the right questions, you're probing. You can prove that you've done your homework by asking the right kind of questions, etc.
Jeff, do you have an example of an intelligent question?
An intelligent question. Well, some of one of the best ones is, so what do you see as the biggest challenge here at at this opportunity?
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps you up at night? What kind of career growth is there? What kind of opportunities will I have? So that shows that you're motivated, without being too motivated, of course. You got to fill the position first, but.
That was kind of an intelligent question, the way you asked Jeff what an intelligent question was. That was
I like how she flipped that around. All of a sudden, she's asking us questions.
That's exactly what you want to do if you ever get asked the questions first in an interview, and that's how you flip it around. So that was a perfect example of what to do. So, see, she's teaching us.
Wow,
things.
She's a quick learner.
I try to be.
She already knew. I don't know. What kind of interview questions do you have?
So some that I like to ask are, describe the work environment. So I can see, is this more of a family feel? Is this more of like a fun? We go get, food after work, 5 o'clock, rush hour. We're going to skip that. We're going to go downstairs and eat together, like kind of what the work environment is like at this organization. And then I want to know what other departments I'm going to be working closely with and how that's going to facilitate my success. I also like to ask maybe a fun question like, what was your favorite event? Or if it's, the Dallas Cowboys, what's your favorite seat in the house? And then sometimes if I feel comfortable enough, I'll turn it back on the interviewer and ask, why me? Why would you see me as a good fit for this position?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I like to do that too. Is there anything that you're concerned about in hiring me? That's really, because it makes them start thinking about hiring you. So that's a good way to frame it. But questions about the interview process, or is there things that you struggle with how to prepare or anything like that?
I've always wondered, is there anything that you should do differently for a phone interview versus a video, say Skype interview, and then the in-person interview?
Well,
I can say one thing is stand up for the interview. If you're on the phone, walk. Don't just sit there and be.
Stand in the Superman pose.
Yeah,
really
look in the mirror. Give yourself thumbs up. Seriously though, because that shows some energy. It comes across a lot better on the phone. And smile, because people can hear a smile, believe it or not. So.
Yeah, actually, there's true techniques. I'm not kidding about the Superman pose, by the way. That actually does help you. It's proven, and I could show you a little technique after the show. I'll show you. After the show, I'll show you. You know that? How psychologically things that are said and the way you're standing can make a huge difference. So it's very important.
Does that mean we need to do the show standing up?
We should. Maybe it'll be more interesting. I don't know if we can carry these microphones around. Actually, we can. So today, the other thing, so you were also asking, I think, a little bit more about how to answer questions before when we talked, or do you feel pretty confident about that?
I can always use more advice on how do you answer a question, or you give obviously an answer, but it's detailed but not too detailed, and kind of like, what's that time frame look like?
Yeah, and we talked about, so for you so it's different based on experience level and what you're doing. So that's a great question to ask. You want to keep yours under pretty much 60 seconds, I'd say.
Yeah, I was thinking
if it's it depends on the question, but if it's a really long question that you need to go into, I would still keep it under 2 minutes, but it just depends on the question. And what I mean by that is if they're asking you about a specific situation, we talked about this before, situation, task, action, result, star, and you want to answer questions in that way. So that's usually going to take, you can probably do that in under 60 seconds, but you want to make sure you're getting whatever detail is needed in there. But not over talking. So whenever you do answer questions are you familiar with STAR?
I am.
Okay. So what I always tell everybody to do a little bit different there is, so if somebody asks you, like, have you ever had an upset customer or, what have you, then you start off with an overall generalization of what you feel. Well, I know that the customer is always right. So that's my overall philosophy. And then you go to, there's a specific situation where this happened and this is how I handled it and this was the actions and results and that kind of thing. And then we talked about before the yes and no but, which I don't know if it's called a theory, model. I've never figured it out. I changed what the end of that is, but we'll just go with yes and no but. And that's ultimately making sure you're giving information. So if somebody asks you, have you ever used Microsoft Excel? You don't say yes. Say, yes, I have used it, and here's how I've used it, or here's some examples. And if you haven't used it, say, no, I haven't, but I've used, what is the one on MacBook? I don't know.
Right,
something similar, so it shows that you can quickly pick up that skill and that you have something that's relatable. And so it kind of keeps it on. Normally, you don't use but because it's a negative connotation, but in that scenario, you do. Because it's ultimately keeping it on a positive. You're taking that negative and turning it positive in that situation.
And if you don't know something, or don't fake it too much, but you can also try to relate it to something you already know, like Melissa had mentioned, or you can say, hey, I'm an eager learner and I'm a quick learner, and so I'm sure I'd pick this up very quickly. So
yeah, be careful with that one, actually.
Why?
Well, I'm trying to think of the right way to frame this. From somebody who's coming from a recruiting and interviewing standpoint, when I hear that question, it's kind of like whenever somebody walks to a job fair, like, what job do you want? Well, what are you hiring for? So it's like, I'm a quick learner. You hear that a lot. So it's something that I actually would suggest not saying, sorry. But it would be more of, finding that relatable thing, or talking about kind of showing how you're a quick learner instead of just saying I'm a quick learner. So showing an example of how you had another situation where you didn't know something and you were able to pick it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yeah. The one thing you don't want to do is just say, I don't know it, and then leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. So sorry, that's kind of a little bit, but that's just something that from an interview, like somebody who's interviewed a lot, and I know you have too. Have you heard that a lot whenever you've interviewed?
Yeah. And they usually try to follow up with some substance to that answer, so that you can understand whether or not they're just using a canned phrase or they actually understand it.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's what I'm saying, is just kind of avoid the, as you said, canned phrase. No. So what other questions do you have? Because I want to make sure that we're here for you to give you some advice about getting the career. So what questions do you have?
Well, let's say, okay, now you've got an offer on the table. How do you negotiate salary?
That's always a fun one. And there's different techniques, and that's one of the things you kind of have to be in the situation for. I would always say you always want to negotiate. Don't get so excited like, I'll take it, because you have to remember in an interview process that you're not just the one who's interviewing, you're interviewing them as well. And you're deciding if you want to work there. So don't settle for less than what you want. Unless it's a step-zone job, which means it's one you're doing until you find the next one. Then you can settle because you just need to make money, but no. So you want to start off with, some negotiation. Now, coming straight from college is interesting, but you want to kind of do some research and be able to point out why the value that you bring and how you can, why you're worth that kind of money. So you kind of put that in place. So when they first offer, you want to kind of say, okay, let me think about it. Don't just jump and say yes. After you've spent some time, say, I'll follow up with you, and give them a time frame that you're going to follow up. So you are kind of building that expectation, because they need to know too from a hiring person's perspective. And then, call them back in that time, say, I've really thought about it, and, what I'm looking for would really be around this, which they're probably going to ask you that ahead of time anyway. And ask them if there's any negotiability on that. And then you can always ask, I get this question all the time, which in corporate you usually can't do, but in sports you might be able to. Well, if we can't do that salary, is there any opportunities to get more vacation or more perks in some way
yeah,
or what have
there's
you.
a lot of other negotiables, the amount of time you get off, or flex hours, or things that they'll work with you on. The one thing that a lot of people will make a mistake about is they'll be in a bonus. Now, not necessarily in an entry level position, but they'll throw bonuses at you. Those are nice, but the base salary is really your key, because when you get increases over the years, that comes off of the base salary, not the bonus that you might have got at one time. So
yeah, and I mean, there's certain groups of people that I've worked with that are amazing negotiators, and part of it's always being willing to walk away is part of the thing. So, but I think it's for you, it's gonna be building that case of why your value's that high, but also kind of doing a little bit of legwork about finding out, like, what do they normally pay, what does this industry pay, and like maybe if you can find out what other people are getting paid, so you can kind of see if you're just, because you don't want to go way off, way out of the ballpark. But I think it's a matter of just kind of getting there. So have a number in your head that you want, and just kind of stick with it, and give the information, and then decide if whatever they offer you, you're willing to take either way. So.
Yeah, and you can always, it doesn't come out in the interview, and a lot of times you don't have that information, but ask them about their benefits package. What's healthcare? Because you can get a job at, I'm just naming a number, $50,000 a year, but you're paying $500 a month out of pocket for healthcare expenses. Whereas maybe somebody is giving you a job at $48,000 a year, but healthcare is free, or maybe only $100 a month, so you come out ahead. I didn't do the math right there, but you know what I mean. So run the numbers and see which better opportunity.
And be firm, yeah, as Tom said, be firm about your response, and also, if you have other opportunities, be clear with them that you do, and that you're really deciding on the best one that's a fit, and show confidence in when you're talking, for sure, and that you're show that this is your value, this is what I'm worth, and you make them want to hire you, like, I really need this person, they're so awesome, or whatever. And I think that really is going to help in that negotiation process too, especially if you have other opportunities. Well, I really appreciate it, but I do have other opportunities I'm considering. Obviously, I'm really excited about this opportunity. Money's not the most important thing, but I have to look at my overall career future, and just kind of put it in that kind of framework.
Are there any special sites that you go to find numbers?
Google.
Yeah, that's a tough one. In certain
it's going to be different
yeah,
locations and industries, and there are some. I mean, you can go to the Department of Labor and look at what people are making, or like see the aggregate, but I don't know if you can to that specific of the sports industry.
No, actually, you can with LinkedIn. If you have a LinkedIn Premium membership, a lot of times it'll give you those numbers.
Yeah,
well.
that's true. Yeah, there's a couple different resources I don't have them off the top of my head. I mean, I know like ones that HR gets access to, like Gartner and stuff like that, but I don't know how the actual like normal individual gets that outside of just Department of Labor and Google. You can find some averages and aggregates.
You might be able to talk to a career counselor at school too. They probably have a pretty good idea, and especially if they've reached out to recent grads who've landed jobs, they should have those numbers. So.
Yeah, and the other thing is that when you're researching, when you're talking to people and you're doing the interview, I mean, you really should go out there and interview as many people as you can, because that's how you're building those contacts, you're getting information, and you're preparing yourself for the main interview. So going out there and talking to people, just asking for the advice like we talked about, and asking them, what kind of salary range should I look for in this industry? What have you seen people make, or what's the starting salary? And that's another way, I mean, the more people you can talk to, the better off you are, because that's where you build your ambassadors and everything else we've talked about. So is your head exploding yet from all this information?
Right.
Only slightly.
Okay, good. Don't worry, it's recorded. You can watch it again. So we are getting close to the end of the show. It happens so fast. So really quickly, what was the most important thing you've learned today?
Most important thing I've learned today?
This is a quiz.
Oh, no. I'm glad I've been paying attention. I would say just to continue to reach out to people, and just like I talked about, the personal touch with the handwritten letters, and building your network that way.
Yeah, most definitely. And interviewing people, right? No, and so you've already got so many things going on. And so actually one thing I wanted to mention before we do go into the next part, which is going to be you telling people how to look at your website again, and how to reach you if they are interested in hiring you. But real quick, before we move into that, I wanted to say that why is it that I keep doing that tonight? It's been a long day, ladies and gentlemen. I think Tom, just kidding. It's going to come back to me in a minute, so we're going to go to you, and then if I get a chance to tell you this, otherwise I'll tell you after the show. I'm sorry. Oh, no. Tom said be interested in the job. Make sure you show your interest as you're interviewing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, have an upbeat, sometimes they're testing you as well. They're real negative, or sometimes they're asking really tough questions just to put you in a position to see how you react. But always be upbeat and positive. Always start off the interview with a real positive, hey, I'm really glad to be here. I'm excited about, discussing this with you. Usually the word interview isn't necessarily a good thing to say, but just I'm really just glad to meet with you. Mm-hmm. At the end, you want to close like a salesperson and say, hey, I really enjoyed our conversation, really excited about the company, leave them on a real positive note.
Gosh, when it comes to the interview process, there's so many pieces of advice I would have, and we didn't even get to cover how to prepare for it. So we're going to talk about it after the show, but we actually have shows where we've talked about it on there before that you can go back and reflect on too. But real quickly, what advice would you give or lesson learned for other people that are in your same situation looking for positions?
What I've learned is that people really do want to help, and you also have to be creative. And the fact that anyone can send an email or a LinkedIn message, but how can you get that person in a new way? I remember at the National Sports Forum, there was a panelist that I asked a question, and it was a fun question. It was like, what's your favorite Olympic sport? Or if you can win Olympic gold medal in any sport, blah, blah, blah. So anyways, he liked my question, and I knew that because later on I saw him in the hallway, and like we had talked about, be friendly to everyone. And just said a casual hello. He's like, hello. He's like, oh, you're the one who asked that colorful question. He's like, yes. And so we got to talking. And then he was the one who later on sent my resume to his contact at the Cowboys.
Wow.
And so just that one question that I asked that was a little bit different from everyone else's, that got me into the Cowboys.
Yeah, that's really cool. Actually, there was a story that Jen's told us, who was on the show not too long ago, about where she was trying to meet somebody, and they were standing at the front, and there was this long line of people, and she sat there for, I don't even know, 4 hours, and every time somebody got like behind her, she would let them in front, and she stayed at the back the whole time. And so when she got up to the person, she went up to him, and he had noticed that she was letting people in front of her, and he's like, I noticed what you did. And she's like, well, I wanted to make sure that whenever I got a chance to talk to you, that I had the most time to talk to you and we could have a real conversation. And he was so impressed that he's now our mentor, and they do a ton of work together. And well, he's made her millions. So it's something that's another, approach to think about. But being creative is in your approach of how you're searching and how you're, communicating it as well is very important. So good call on that. All right. So tell people how they can reach you if they're interested in hiring you, or maybe getting advice about, how you're doing your career search. Absolutely. Like I just said, people love to help, and that includes myself. And so you can reach me by LinkedIn. It's Liz Prasse, Prasse. Also on my website, www.lizprasse.wordpress.com. I've got lots of videos, graphics, stories on there that you can check out if you're interested. There's also a contact form you can fill out and send to me. Or if you just want to do generic email, it's ehprasse@yahoo.com. I can tell you, anybody that's listening that's in the sports industry, you would be very lucky to have somebody like Liz on your team.
Absolutely.
So very impressive young lady, and we're very excited to have you on the show. So I wanted to say thank you for coming on. And real quickly, I wanted to make sure I mentioned the job of the day, even though if this show airs later, it's going to be past time. But we've got a position currently at a company that I'm aware of that is looking for engineers. We need some project managers / engineers that have mechanical engineering and machine design. And in addition to that, we also need a lead that's doing engineering, machine design, same concept. Need to have moving parts. Quite a few roles in engineering, in fact, mechanical, electrical, you name it. So I want to make sure I mention those. And to find out more, you can go to www.j2bradio. Again, it's j2bradio.com, and just send an email from there, and we will get back to you with information about those positions and how you can apply. So again, this is Journey to Business, brought to you by Fishbowl Radio Network with Melissa and
Jeff Camino
and our guest,
Liz Prasse.
Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week, Thursday, 7 p.m., same time, same Batman place, right? And remember, life is limitless. Are you ready to own your journey?
Yo, this solo.
So we're still on Facebook. Before we go, you have to do a little dance move. All right, cool.
Hey, this is Nate Miller from
Face the camera, though. That's not good.
I'm
check
sorry.
out the show every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time.
There we go. Okay.
On Fishbowl Radio Network. All the highlights.